right, well, good morning. Welcome to today's webinar entitled Qualtrics Basics. My name is Dr. John Diaz, and I'm an assistant professor and extension specialist in the Department of Ag and Communications. Today's webinar is going to go over some really basic stuff. So I'm setting up the survey, understanding how to select different question types, understanding how to use real basic skip logic, and then after you've created your survey, understanding how to disseminate that survey, and then how to access the data and reports that you get from that survey. So, since there may be varying levels of expertise on Qualtrics, for this webinar, I want to start from the very beginning. So just to access Qualtrics, you have Qualtrics, and if you'll see, for me, it was the third link on my Google search. So you'll just click on the Qualtrics link, sign in like you would with anything with your GatorLink username and password, and you're in. Once you've gotten into Qualtrics, there's a lot of options to create a new survey. If you just go to your new survey project on the top right-hand corner, I'll go ahead and move this because I think this is blocking everyone's view. So you go ahead and create a project, and I like to do the create your own. There are some templates that you can utilize depending on what you're doing, but I like to start things from scratch just so that I can structure it and format it the way that I think is most beneficial for what I'm trying to do. Once you've clicked on starting a survey, you'll name it, and then just go ahead and get started. So there's a lot of different question types that you can utilize within Qualtrics. If you see where the arrow is, that's kind of where you have the option to change your question type. So just by selecting on that, it gives you this whole list of different question types. And throughout this webinar, I'll walk you through the format that I use for creating a survey and help you understand what one format is that you can utilize. So that's how this whole thing will be structured. So with the surveys that I create, I usually start with descriptive text. It essentially sets things up so people understand what it is that they're going to be asked to do and why I'm sending them a survey. This is a good best practice for any survey, so it's not just jumping right into the questions. There's some sort of introductory text to familiarize the participants with what they'll be asked in addition to the email that you may send them. Whenever you're creating a survey, especially if you're going to be doing it online, you want to make sure that after every question you insert a page break. This makes sure that with your surveys, the participants are only seeing one question at a time, and it limits the need for them to scroll. And this is particularly salient for your participants that are doing the surveys on their smartphones. We're starting to find out that people are using their smartphones for practically anything. So by having it only one question at a time, it helps them have a better experience and not have to worry about scrolling, which a lot of times will lead to them closing out the survey. So just make sure you do that when you're creating your surveys. Next, you simply click on the create a new question as you want to create your next question, and that'll pop up this kind of basic click to write the question text as your next question. I always like to have as my first question, how much of the training did you attend? So since it is in the multiple choice option already, I just fill in the question and provide the options of all of the training, some of the training, and I did not attend the training. That's a simple inserting your cursor there and typing. There's not anything that's really that complicated. Again, you'll see that there's the page break to make sure that participants only see one question at a time. And I also like to put what you see in my second arrow, which is forced response. This makes sure that the participants don't skip this question and have to answer how much of the training they participated in before they move on. The next question that I typically ask for in a survey is their overall satisfaction. This for me just gives me a basic litmus test on if they were satisfied with the training that I offered. One of the things that I'll point to in this is, as you can see, there's an opportunity to use automatic choices within your scales. So within Qualtrics, it has a bunch of pre-validated scales. So if you're asking for satisfaction or something that the scale already exists, you can go ahead and use those already validated scales and rather than create it yourself. And if you don't use the automatic choices, you just have to go and fill in with what anchors you want to use and what scales you want to use manually. So as you see, I did the forced response. I created a page break, and now the questions will start getting into the meat of the survey, which is actually measuring knowledge gain. The structure for this example will be a retrospective pre-post test, which is essentially asking both their baseline and the potential increase in knowledge after the workshop. So I'm going to start with the traditional retrospective structure and then move into the structure that I utilize that makes things a little bit easier. So if you go back into your question bank, you'll see that there's a side-by-side option, which is the structure that you'd want to use for the traditional process. Then it gives you the opportunity to put in the language that you'd want. So for me, I always like to put some reflective language on thinking about your knowledge prior to and now as a result, and then answer after what your knowledge is and before. As you can see with those two columns, you can put your after and before and directly delineate what you want folks to do. And then when you click on the column actions, you can add column answers so that you can have different scale points. So all I did was I mirrored what I have for my scale up top, put the 1 to 5, and then it gives you the opportunity to have that retrospective in one item rather than having to do two separate surveys. The thing that I caution folks with using this structure, and if you were part of the data analysis and reporting webinar that was yesterday, doing it in this format requires a paired t-test, which is just a little bit more legwork on your end to systematically evaluate changes in knowledge. So if that's something that you're comfortable in doing, this is definitely a structure that you can utilize and then analyze that data on the back end to see if there was a significant difference. The structure that I use leverages the traditional matrix table. I usually use about 3 scale points to make things a little bit easier. And I use some of that same reflective language, but rather than having folks arbitrarily or subjectively identify their knowledge, I just ask them simply if their knowledge increased by yes or no. Also offering the option of an NA, so that if they came in midway through the webinar or the workshop and they missed some topics, rather than it just saying no, you have the opportunity to kind of filter those out so it doesn't just look like there's a whole group of folks that didn't gain knowledge. You understand that they maybe weren't there present when you gave that part of the workshop. So as you can see, this is really basic. Yes, no, NA. And this gives you some really clean data to understand just simply if their knowledge increased in different areas of the workshop or webinar or whatever activity that you offered. Once you've put in your page break and move on to the next question, this is typically where I get into the formative evaluation questions, which are, what did you like, what did you not like, and how can things be improved? So I typically do that with text entry so that folks can really explain to me what they found to be useful and what can be improved, rather than giving folks closed-ended items, which really don't provide much data for me. So as you can see, you can just go into the text entry option, and I like to use the essay opportunity, so it gives folks more space to provide their input into what needs to be changed. So as you can see, the first question was, what was the most useful part of the training? And if I want to open up the text box to be a little bit bigger, the arrow is pointing towards the bottom right corner, which all you have to do is drag, and you've got 2 larger boxes. So as you can see with the second slide, there's an additional question on how could the training be improved. So I found with those 2 questions, you get enough data to really make sense of what parts of a workshop you want to carry forward and what areas are there to improve. And this is a little bit of a transition to what's been done previously in Extension, where there's a long list of, how was the air conditioning? Did you like the food? Was the seating comfortable? How did you like the presenters? This way it gives them the opportunity to organically tell you what they liked and what they did not. So now we're going to be going into real quick what the skip logic may look like. And I utilize this predominantly for those folks that I send out a survey to and they may not have participated but were registered for the event. So if you go to the left-hand side of the question where that gear is, that'll pop up.
Filter, or you can get a 10,000 out of 10.
One second, Michael, if you mind muting yourself, I can hear you. Appreciate it. So when you go to this option, you go and click Add Skip Logic. Then you select what option the participant would need to select for the skip logic to be utilized. And so I said if they did not attend the training, it would essentially take them to the end of the survey. So this is a way so you don't get bunk data and have folks that didn't attend the training offering their perspective, and it just gives, helps to move them to the end of the survey, and it doesn't give them the reminders if you built that in. So it's just a really basic skip logic on how to make sure you filter participants into the survey and non-participants to the end of the survey. Once you've created what you feel like is the final product, I highly recommend going through the preview process. This will help you to understand what the user experience looks like, and it gives you both the traditional web experience, which you see on the left, and then your mobile experience. And I really like seeing both because, as I mentioned, there's a lot of participants that are taking these surveys over the phone. So it's really important to see what their experience looks like and adapting things if you feel like that experience is not where it needs to be. Once you've gone through that preview process, you want to make sure that you publish it. If you don't publish it, then you won't be able to disseminate and have folks actually access the survey. So once you click on the publish icon, it'll bring up this kind of publishing report. If there are any things that need to be changed or any recommendations that they give to enhance it, that'll be where you'll see the view recommendations. Once you've gotten it to a point where you feel comfortable with, and you just go ahead and select the publish option. This will automatically give you an anonymous link, and that you can disseminate that way or otherwise, and I'll dive into that a little bit later on in this webinar. In addition to creating the survey, there's some survey options and kind of look and feel components that I would recommend thinking about. So two of the things that I typically incorporate into my surveys is giving folks the opportunity to use the back button. They're going through and they've missed something, or they feel like there's something that they need to change, that gives them the opportunity to do so. Before, I did not have the back button as an option, and that led to a lot of participants emailing me asking if they can have access to the survey again because they wanted to go back a question. So to help to alleviate some of that extra work on your end, just make that an option. And then also the save and continue. If for whatever reason there's a participant that goes in your survey and life happens and they have to close it out, this gives them the opportunity to save and come back later rather than having to bug you and get access again. So again, limit the amount of work you have to do on the back end so you can focus on other things within your workload. Also within the look and feel options, I usually manipulate the next button text and the previous button text. Typically, it's just the arrow. So you want to make sure that you have them some text so they know what they're doing. After you've made all of those edits, you always want to make sure that you publish again. If you do not publish after you make those edits, it will not carry over to what your participants will see. So anytime you edit a survey, make sure that you hit publish and go through that process before you disseminate. So before we go on to the additional functionalities within Qualtrics, I want to take a real quick pause. If you want to do it on the chat or just unmute yourself and ask the question, just want to pause for questions, see if there's anything that folks had needed points of clarification or some questions in regards to how to utilize it within their program that can help to clarify. I'll give folks a couple minutes. BG?
Dr. Davis, sorry, this is Kimber from Miami. Can you please go back over the look for field really quick? I feel like that went faster than my eyes could take it in.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, so this is these are just some options that help you to adjust the look and feel. I add in the buttons that are there. So the previous, I add next and previous, so folks have that text. I also, within the progress bar, if it's a multi-page survey, I usually select that it has some text so they understand how many, at what percentage do they have left, so they get an understanding of where they're at within the survey. This helps to mitigate the paradigm of they continue to click and it's not over and they close out. So it just gives them an understanding of where they are within that survey.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
VG, I saw you raise your hand.
Yes, hi. When you talked about the save and continue option, is that available for anonymous links or only if the participant has to log in or has a direct link sent to their email?
So this will be for anonymous links as well. It builds it into the process. Once they click that anonymous link, it essentially sets up a sub-survey that's just theirs with a unique identifiers. So they'll still have the opportunity to get in there using that anonymous link.
Assuming it's that they're using the same browser or something like that.
Right. It makes it a lot easier to go back and save and continue and all that stuff when you have a unique link for each participant. But this is still possible if you do use that anonymous function.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So I have trying to figure out how to work the hand raising. I saw 2 folks raise their hand. And for whatever reason, it's not telling me who that is. So if one of you guys that raised your hand wants to just go ahead and chime in.
Hi, this is
Hey.
Asia from DeSoto County. I had a quick question. When you said that you have to make sure you publish your edits every time you do that, say you've already sent out your link and you realize something's wrong and you have to just make a quick change, would you need to resend the new link to everyone again? Or if somebody hadn't clicked on it, you know, prior to your making that change, would that link be updated?
Right. So the link will not change at all. What'll change is what people see once they get into that link. And so really depending on how many folks have taken the survey and how drastic the changes are, you may need to send out kind of an email saying that folks need to retake it or have a different link created. But if it's kind of superficial changes, like there's some text that you needed to change or you notice there was a grammatical error, just go through, change it, publish it, and just kind of go from there because it won't change your results.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. I saw somebody else had their hand raised. You just want to go ahead and unmute and ask your question. All right. Well, I guess we don't have any more, so I'll go ahead and keep going. If for whatever reason you think about it, we can address that at the end of it. So we've gone over how to create your survey. Now, how do we get it out to the people that we want to get it out to? So if you look at the screen, there's the distribution function that'll take you to your different distribution options on how to disseminate your survey. So the ones that I'll be going over today is the use of the anonymous link in emails. As you can see, there's a lot of other options, including a QR code that you can utilize. One that I will point to that I won't not go over, but it's something to think about is the offline app. This is really salient for folks that do field visits. If you have an observation protocol or a survey that you want to administer and you think that you may have some issues in accessing internet, utilizing that offline app will help to give you access to that survey, even if you do not have internet access yourself. So the first is the anonymous link. This is just a link that Qualtrics sends you that you would then just copy and paste to your correspondence with your participants, and it's the same link for everyone. And there's also the opportunity to customize your link. So if you don't want this kind of random set of numbers and letters at the end, you can customize it to have your workshop name or whatever you feel like is a good identifier. That's a little bit easier for folks to understand and maybe copy and paste into their browser or type, just generally speaking. So that's anonymous link is really basic. You just send it out and everyone gets that access to that link and fills the survey out that way. The challenge with using anonymous links is it's hard to figure out who filled out the survey and really follow up with the folks rather than outside of just sending a blanket email to all of your participants. The second option is composing a survey through Qualtrics. You have the opportunity to use the Qualtrics platform to disseminate the survey to all your participants, and in this way it creates a unique link for each of your participants. So this is what you would go to once you select your email options. And you can create a new contact list based on who you want to participate in the survey. And it's really simple. You just enter in their email address is really the basic thing that they need to send out the survey. And if you wanted to add any additional information like first and last name, there's other options that you can incorporate. But what it really boils down to is just having an email list to be able to disseminate the survey out to. You can then adjust when you send it out. So if you wanted to send it out when you created it, you can do it then. There's all these other options of an hour, 8 hours, etc., or you can use a custom date. Typically, best practices show that sending it out Monday morning as people get into the week is the best time to do it. So that's typically when I do it. So if you just go in and put in what date you want and at what morning time, that gives you the opportunity to leverage it within that time. And you go and you create the language that you want, explaining what they're about to do, and it automatically embeds the survey within that email. One of the really cool things about doing it through Qualtrics is it allows you to do automated reminders and thank yous as individuals fill it out. Scheduling those reminders are really a good best practice to increase your response rate. This allows folks to be constantly reminded of being able to fill out the survey, so it's not just one survey link that's sent to them. You may send a couple reminders so that it stays on their radar and it doesn't get lost in the busy shuffle of someone's day. There's also within there, I'm not going to go through it, but there's the download history. So if you get to the end of your reminders and you still see there's a couple folks that you really want to get data from, you can see who's filled it out and who's not, and then you can just follow up with them individually using their unique link. With the reminders, it takes you again to this exact same screen where it gives you the opportunity to identify at what dates you want to do reminders, and Qualtrics will automatically send it for you. So you don't have to worry about following up yourself and creating emails on certain days. This will automatically pump it out for you to your participants so that you're able to worry about other things rather than sending these follow-up emails. If you decide for whatever reason you want to send it out via paper, all you have to go is go to the tools function here and go import, export. This will bring you to this screen where if you want to do it through Word, it gives you the opportunity to identify what you want to include. I always say don't include anything in there because then it incorporates it into the survey. Some formatting will be required because Qualtrics is really meant for online delivery. So you want to make sure that you structure, you revise it for the structure that you want for your paper format. And if you know you're going to be doing a paper survey, do not use the page breaks. Those page breaks are really meant for online delivery. So if you see here, by putting a page break, it's just got this random line in the middle of your paper. So just some things to consider in your formatting and depending on what modality you're going to deliver your surveys, some of the things you want to consider with your design. So once you've delivered it, folks have filled it out, you have the option to see what your data is. So you just click on your data and analysis tab. It'll give you kind of this broad brush overlook of who's filled it out and what the data is. And it gives you the opportunity to export your data to whatever platform you want to utilize for analysis, whether it be Excel, SPSS, or whatever platform is your choice or your preferred platform. Gives you the opportunity to identify what format you want to export it in, and then you just download it. So this is just a example of what it would look like within that template or that example survey that I created, what the data would look like in regards to a Excel spreadsheet. The next functionality within Qualtrics is the report function. This essentially puts your data into pretty bar charts, percentages, and things of that nature so that if you don't want to necessarily analyze it yourself, this will give you some really basic analysis that you could utilize for your ROAs. So as you can see that it's got these bar charts that show kind of graphically the answers of different folks for different questions. And then it gives you the percentages of, for this one, how many folks identified an increase in knowledge versus those that did not. If you can see on just above this one, there's number 6, accessing data and or reports. There's things like mean, standard deviation, and things of that nature. So there is a lot of data that is here that if you're simply entering your data into one or a couple of surveys through Qualtrics, it'll aggregate it for you and make things a little bit easier for reporting on the back end when it's our lovely time of the year, which is ROA season. So as I mentioned, this was going to be pretty short, sweet, and to the point. Just wanted to walk you through some of those basic functions within Qualtrics. This will be recorded, so if you have to review some of the concepts, you can do it that way or through the PDF. But I just encourage you to try to familiarize yourself with Qualtrics, get in there and play around. And if you have more advanced questions, you can obviously reach out to me individually. So before we leave today, I just want to pause for some questions and try to clarify some things before we leave for the afternoon. So go ahead.
I have one quick question. Even with the customizable link that you can send out through your email, are all of the answers through Qualtrics always going to be anonymous?
So that if you do it through that email, the email functionality, because it's a unique link for each person, when you download the history, it'll show, let's say, if I was a participant, it'll show John Diaz. If I filled it out, that I filled it out and what my answers are. So the anonymous link is the only way to do it legitimately anonymously, because otherwise you'll have an understanding of who did what.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
And the best way to have it tied to that email is to create that contact list and then select it from the drop down.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the way that whenever I have a large group, I like to do it that way, just so that I can track who's done it and who else needs to do it. And like you said, yeah, you just create that contact list and it'll track that throughout the however long you decide you're going to keep that survey live.
So you essentially have a new contact list for every, program or every event type thing?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Do you have to put them all in individually, or is there a way to like I'm just thinking like on Outlook you can copy and paste and
Yeah, you can copy and paste, and you can also import contact lists. So if you had, let's say, your Eventbrite spit out or PDEX spit out a list of an Excel spreadsheet with a list of the folks that are registered, you can just import that in and go from there. But I'd like the copy and paste because it's super easy. So I just copy and paste the emails into that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I saw we had another question.
You answered the question, thanks.
Okay, no problem, Marguerite. Any other questions? All right. Well, that's all I've got for you guys today. I definitely appreciate everyone's participation. And as you go through the process of trying to create surveys and familiarize yourself with what you want to do for your program, as I always say, please feel free to reach out to me. Unfortunately, my phone will not get you to where I'm at today because I'm working from home, but my email address is always a great way to contact me. So if you have questions and needed some help in trying to figure things out, just shoot me an email and we'll get together. All right. Well, I hope everyone has a great afternoon, and I will see you all hopefully soon.
Bye.